Hi there, and welcome back to the next step on the e-learning course. Today we are going to learn how to build the application, view and edit equipment. This app will allow you to view the equipment that you collected on the first application, edit the values that you insert, and the main feature will be assign a field worker to the equipment. So let's jump into the designer and start building the application. Now let's create the application, view and edit equipment. Then we need to assign an SAP class to the application. Let's jump into the Eclipse and create the class for the application. The name of the class is going to be ZCL view and edit equipment. We need to assign the interface that connects to the application and create all the methods from the interface. Now we can copy the name of the class and jump into the designer. Let's pass the name of the class and activate the application. To start this application, we are going to use a building block, a simple app building block. To choose the building block, we need to select in the tree with the right button and choose the building block. Then we can choose the app building block. Let's expand all the objects that were imported by the building block. Let's activate and see the result. So the first thing that needs to happen when the application is open, it's that we need to calculate the number of days until check for all the equipment. To do that, let's jump into the Eclipse and create the logic. Let's start by creating the global table equipment that will store all the records. Let's create the logic to retrieve the records, calculate the days, and update the database.
This days until check logic works essentially like this, where the checkup date provided when creating the equipment is combined with the service interval. You can add these two together to produce the next date where the checkup is due. You can then remove today's date from this and you'll be able to see how many days left until the checkup is due. So as an example, if today's date was the 16th of the 6th, we can take the checkup date of the equipment, add the checkup interval to it, see the difference between today's date and the checkup interval, and then we can calculate the days until check.
Now that the logic was created, let's activate the class and jump into the application. To call the logic that we have done, we need to use the attach_init event. This event is triggered when the application starts. The building block created this inside the function script file. In there, we need to call our Ajax. The first thing that we need to do is to drag an Ajax into our resource folder. Then we need to assign a name and an Ajax ID equal to the one that we inserted in the SAP class. Now that we have created the Ajax, we can trigger the call. To do that, we need to put the code get online and then the name of the Ajax. Let's type it. If for some reason you change the Ajax name afterwards, you will need to update the code also. When the Ajax ends, we need to notify the user that the call was done successfully. So let's jump into the Ajax success and put a message there. And this can be done very easily by using a code snippet. Let's put the message starting refresh, and now we can activate the application and see the result. And to do that, we need to use the debugging capabilities of the browser. So let's open it by pressing F12, navigate to the network tab and see the Ajax call there. For now, we can close the debugging tools. We just need to press the F12. So now we need to load the information to the application. Let's create a new Ajax call that will retrieve the list of equipment. Let's give it the name get equipment, and let's jump into the Eclipse to create the logic for that. But first, before completing the logic, let's see the first Ajax in work. Let's check in the Z equipment table and change one of the days until check, and then trigger the call and see the value being updated. As we can see, the value was calculated again to minus 16. Now let's jump back and create the logic. We need to activate the application and jump into the app. Now, in order to trigger the get equipment Ajax, we need to go to the first one and put there the logic triggering the second one. So let's type get online and the name of the Ajax, get equipment, and now we are triggering the second Ajax. But we need to have something to receive this information. So let's put a list in the application. Let's search and drag it to the tree. Now we need to assign to the model sort the table that brings the records from the SAP. Let's click it on the button and choose the global table equipment and bind it. Now we just need to do one final step in order to receive the information. We need to go to the Ajax, open the model, and tick the receiving checkbox for the list. Let's activate the application. The user needs to know that the refreshing has ended. So let's add a toast saying that the refresh ended. And for that, let's open the Ajax success for the get equipment and insert it there. Now that we have added the message, let's start building the list. And for that, we need to insert a list item. Let's go to the search box and type list and see which options do we have. As we can see, we have a standard list item, an object list item, a notification list item, an input list item, and so on. So, which one should we choose? And for that, normally we can go to the Fiori guidelines and choose list, scroll down, and see all these object list items with a visual representation and a description for each one of them. Another option is to go to the Neptune account portal, choose the option for developers, and then navigate to the SAP edition, open the app samples, and inside of there we are able to see how to use all of these objects inside the app designer. We are able to render and see all the properties and so on. Let's jump into the designer and do some practical cases and see the features for some of them. Let's start with a standard list item. Let's drag it. Now let's activate the application and see that we should have 3 lines in the list. Okay, so we don't have, probably we have some type of error. Let's do some investigation. Let's open the Ajax that retrieves the list, see the Ajax name that we put there, get equipment. Okay, I think we have a typo. Let's jump into the Eclipse. Yes, it's missing the S in the end. Let's put it, activate it, and now we have the 3 empty lines. So now that we have the 3 lines, let's start binding the properties to some elements in order to see the render. Let's bind into the info the part number and in the title the name. Let's activate, and as we can see, now we have the part name on the right. On the left we have the name. We also can include an icon on this type of item. Now let's try the custom list item. A custom list item is used when we need to build our own layout, because inside of this list we can drag and drop almost all types of objects and design the layout as we want. So let's drag 2 text elements inside the custom list item and bind them to part name and name. Let's activate and see how they render. As you can see, they are rendered together in the same line. So if you want to have in different lines, let's drag a vertical box and put them inside this and see how they will render there. As we can see, now we have 1 item per line. Let's try to put an image inside this. Let's search for image objects and try to drag it into the custom list item. As we can see, we are able to drag it there. But if we try to drag it inside the standard list item, we are not able to drop it there. Let's disable the custom list item because it's not the one that we are going to use on our app. In our app, we want to use the object list item because it will suit all of our needs. Let's drag one and start building the list. Let's delete the 2 list item objects that we don't need, and let's rename the list to equipment list and the object list item to object list item equipment. Let's also organize a little bit our application by dragging some folders inside the resources. So the first folder, it will be named script. Let's drag the script inside there. Let's drag a new folder inside the other one that we dragged before. Let's change the name to Ajax and the subfolder to init. Let's drag the Ajax get days until check into the init folder because this one is triggered at the beginning, and then let's drag the get equipment inside the Ajax folder. Now let's start binding the properties to some fields. Let's start by the title and bind it to part number and name. Let's press the bind and concatenate. Let's activate and see the result. Because we bind and concatenate both fields, they are stick together. So to improve visually the application, let's format the text and put a dash in the middle in order to improve visually. And to do that, let's scroll into the format options, choose the title, press the button on the right, and the JavaScript code opens automatically. In our case, we just want to put the dash in the middle between the part number and the name. So let's go to line 6 and add the dash between the quotation marks. Let's activate and navigate to the preview and see the results. Now, as you can see, the part number and the name are split with a dash. This significantly improves the way we can read the content on the application. Let's go on to the second field and bind the intro into the assigned to field. Now we can activate and see that in the first line we are able to see the worker name that the task was assigned to. But on the other two we don't have any information. So let's format and put a line just to highlight that these ones are not assigned. And to do that, let's use again the formatter. Let's jump into the format of the intro and let's rewrite the code. Let's start by removing the typo. Let's keep the check to undefined. Let's delete the null one and keep the empty. Let's delete the return and copy the format text to the line 2 and put some dashes in front of it. On the else statement, let's pass the assign to the format text. Let's activate and see how it shows. Okay, so let's go to the third binding. In this case, we are going to bind the icon. But in this case, the icon property is expecting to have a specific nomenclature like SAP dash and the name of the icon. But in our case, we intend to assign it to a sign for checking that it's a boolean. If we do this and activate the application will have a JavaScript error. Let's open the debugger and see it there. As we can see, it's mentioned that a boolean was binded to it. In order to solve this issue, let's use the icon format. Let's open the JavaScript and rewrite the code. In our case, we need to check if the assign for checking is equal to true. So let's create an if statement, and we're also going to need the else statement. Let's copy the var format text into both of them, and on the if statement, let's type in front of the format text SAP-icon : / activity -individual. And for the else statement, let's copy this string until the dash after the activity and pass it on the second var format text and add item to the end. Let's activate and see how it behaves right now. As we can see, one of the icons it's not showing. Let's open the debug features, and we don't have any JavaScript error related to this, so probably we have a typo on the icon name. Let's go there, and yes, it's missing the S in the end. Now it's a good time to highlight a way to know all the names of the icons. To see all the icons, you just need to go to the lower left corner and press there the icon, and it will open a pop-up with all the icons, so you can choose which one do you want to use. As we can see, in our case it was missing the S in the end. So let's activate the application and see the result. And now we are able to see the two icons. Okay, let's go to the fourth field. In this case, we want to assign the days until check, that it's a number, but the highlight is expecting to see error, info, none, success, or warning as the content. Let's assign the days until check, and in this case we are not able to use the formatters because we don't have any for the highlight. Instead, we are going to use the binding expression on the binding pop-up. So let's open the binding pop-up and bind the previous field that we bind. It will close. Okay, let's open it again and copy the days until check and start typing the expression. We need to start with curly brackets. Okay, let's put the second one because we will need a second one, and close both of them. Now let's go to the first one, and we need to put an equal sign, then a dollar sign, then inside the second curly brackets we can pass the name of the field that we copy, and now we can check if the days until check it's bigger than 1. If it's the case, let's pass the success as an output. Otherwise, let's pass an error. Let's activate, and as we can see, we have two lines in green, that each one of them are the success ones, and the third one it's the red one, it's the error.
Here are some more examples around this type of advanced expression binding. Here we've got a highlight check, which will check a property against a number and then return either a true or false output. In this case, this can just be a string with the result as success or error. In the second example, we're changing the visibility of a component via this binding, where we can even use methods such as toUpperCase, run a check against that, and also include OR statements, where we can then compare a different property against a different amount. So here we can see if we enter rating into this binding, the result will be true. However, if we enter no rating and our order amount being 5,000, the result will be false. Finally, here's a more complicated expression binding with a single property which is checked once. The result could be true or false, and if it is false, we can run another check with a different value and we can return a separate result with a true or false. So in this case, if we input the value B, the output will be warning, as the second clause is true.
Now we need to show to the user the days until check. So let's go to the number property and assign it to days until check. Once again, let's activate the application. To improve the information that it's displayed, let's concatenate the number of days with the word days. For that, let's go to the format and do that. Let's activate the application and see the result. Okay, let's go on and improve the visual part of the application. Let's start by changing the title on the page. Right now, the text that it's being displayed was imported from the building block. Let's delete the bar and change the title on the page to View and Edit Equipment. Once more, let's activate and see the outcome. Now we need to start adding actions to the page. So let's put a button on the left corner. Let's drag into the bar content that says right and then rename the bar content to left. And we also need to change the position to left. Let's give a meaningful name to the button, in this case button refresh, and add an icon to the button. In this case, let's search by the refresh. Okay, so let's activate and we are able to see the button on the left lower corner. Let's add a press event to the button. Let's open the JavaScript and insert there a message saying that a refresh was started. And then we actually need to trigger the Ajax call. So let's put get online and the Ajax name get equipment. Let's activate and see the pop-up appearing when we press the button. Now, to help the user identifying the content on the list, let's add some titles before the list. We will start by dragging a horizontal box and two object titles inside the H box. Let's change the name of the first one to title equipment detail and add the text equipment details. Let's do the same for the second one. In this case, let's call it title days and change the text to check in. Now we can activate, but as we can see, both of them are stick together. To rearrange the content inside the H-box, we will need to change one property. In this case, we need to change the justify content to space between to include some space between both fields. Let's activate, and now we can see that one it's on the left side and the other one it's on the right side. Let's also add some space between the border and the title. So we just need to add a style class margin. So let's choose a small margin in the beginning, and on the second title let's put a small margin in the end. Once more, let's activate. If we need, we can increase the size of the letter by changing the title style, as we can see. Okay, let's revert and delete the style. Now, regarding the list, we need to do one additional thing. Let's open our debug to simulate a smaller screen, and let's see one thing. When we try to scroll, the header that we add disappears. So we want to keep it in place, and for that we need to include a scroll container. Let's drag the scroll container and drag the list into it. We need to set the vertical to through in order to scroll vertical, and the height to 100% to occupy the entire screen. Let's activate and open the debugger. Now, if we try to scroll, it will be the scroll container that will scroll instead of the page.